So let's go ahead and jump right into this. We have a lot of questions we want to get to today and a lot of information that we want to provide all of you. The tools and technology required to conduct decentralized trials have existed for years. Although some companies seem to be early adopters, it also seemed that many companies took a wait and see sort of approach to them. So Carrie, I would like to go ahead and get the discussion started with you. Did you see many trials prior to the spring of 2020 that were adopting decentralized approaches? And can you also tell us from the site perspective, what happened in the spring of 2020 when the pandemic began to impact North America?
For sure. I would say we were a bit of an anomaly. We started what we referenced as an e-study, a virtual trial in 2015-16. We worked with a sponsor quite closely on all of the different DCT options, just to kind of really test it out versus the traditional method. That literally was the protocol, and went through an incredible learning experience through that process. So I would say we had a bit of a head start going into the DCT rollout, but traditionally there was not a lot of options outside of maybe e-pros, the e-diaries that are used in trials. That was commonly used, as well as potentially they started the IP delivery to patients and retrieval and accountability. That was something that was routinely used. I would say when the pandemic hit, of course, everything halted. The sites really had to come together and figure out new processes, new SOPs and working procedures related to direct to patient, being able to see a patient at roadside, if you will. How do you continue care through a telemedicine kind of portal, make sure that it's, meeting privacy and compliance standards from a Part 11 compliance. So all of these items were quickly transitioned. And, I think a lot of the questions after, systems like paperless systems, we realized once remote monitoring became, CRAs couldn't get out to sites, we had to quickly figure out ways to get the monitors access to the data. And so those systems that were being deployed or maybe resistant to adopt at sites became a very, this is where we're going to proceed full steam ahead, roll out these paperless systems. And that's really opened just an incredible amount of doors and opportunities, not just for the CRAs and the sponsors, but for the sites, being able to do remote teams. There was a real interest to create a remote kind of work from home concept. And so these paperless systems have created opportunities for sites to do remote kind of at home work, if you will, to support the sites in a paperless system format.
And you rattled off several things there, and it seems like there was a lot of work involved in this. Do you feel that during that time, sites were getting a lot of assistance from sponsor companies in doing what they had to do, or did you more or less feel you were left on your own to kind of figure this out for yourself?
Initially, I would say we were left on our own. I think sites are really quick to pivot because we're smaller institutions, so we can certainly run with it, if you will. I think the pharma had to really regroup and get the approvals from the higher ups, if you will, and the regulators to make sure that what they were rolling out were compliant. So I would say sites really forged ahead. We were instructed to kind of get sponsor approval or process where possible, and then to also get ethics approval to really kind of roll out some of these systems. But I would say they eventually caught up. What was also a delay, though, was how we were compensated for the extra work we were doing. That was definitely a challenge.
And it seems that's getting paid. Seems like it's been a problem for a long time. I know the first SCRS conference I attended was about 6 years ago, and payments, I think, were at the top of the agenda, and probably still is. Brad, let me ask you this. When sponsor companies were scrambling to incorporate decentralized components into their trials to keep them from getting delayed or canceled, what were some of the biggest challenges that you feel sites suddenly had to deal with? And I would like to come back and get Carrie's take on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think at first and even for quite some time, it was pretty chaotic. And I think that probably also had a lot to do with sort of how sophisticated you were as a site. Frankly, we had was very early in the beginning of my company, so we were pretty, I would say, unsophisticated. We didn't have a lot of our own tools. So we did rely very much on the sponsors and the different offerings that they were, sort of trying to scramble to come up with. So I think in a lot of ways, it was just very challenging to sort of discern, what's appropriate, what's going to work best, and sort of how to implement that in a very quick time frame, especially for a company who's still relatively small like ours. So I think in the beginning it was just, again, sort of what are we doing and how are we doing it, and are we having to do it 25 different ways with 25 different sponsors? So I think that created a lot of challenges for us at the site level in determining, again, how are we going to sort of navigate this new world.
And what were some of the things that they were primarily trying to do? I mean, when we talk about decentralized components to trials, it's a pretty lengthy list of things that could be incorporated there. What were some of the main things that you were seeing that, like, it seemed every company was suddenly trying to do?
I mean, we certainly saw a lot of home health, more home health opportunities in terms of sending nurses out to see patients rather than getting patients out in public, direct to patient shipments, even e-consent for the trials that were still enrolling. I'd say those were probably the three most common that we saw sort of really start to take a very very quick rollout during that time.